Ja, meine Damen und Herren, ich freue mich sehr, dass Sie heute unserer Einladung gefolgt sind zu unserem Spotlight in der KfW Stiftung. Ich hatte gerade schon gesagt, wir haben heute große Konkurrenz, das gute Wetter sozusagen, das Jahr fängt mit gutem Wetter an, aber umso mehr freue ich mich, dass Sie heute da sind und dass Sie quasi mit Ihrer Anwesenheit sozusagen ein doppeltes Statement für diese Veranstaltung und auch für den Künstler geben. Mein Name ist Michael Helbig, ich bin Vorstand der KfW Stiftung und ich begrüße Sie recht herzlich hier bei uns in der Villa 102. Der eine oder andere war von Ihnen sicherlich schon einmal hier, sicherlich nicht in der Villa 102, sondern früher vielleicht im alten Literaturhaus. Wir als KfW Stiftung haben uns zur Aufgabe gesetzt, Wandel zu gestalten. Auf ganz unterschiedlichen Bereichen, im Bereich Wirtschaft und Gesellschaft, im Bereich Ökologie und Nachhaltigkeit, aber auch im Bereich Kunst und Kultur. Denn Kunst und Kultur setzt Aspekte, Impulse, die uns helfen, gesellschaftliche Realitäten, gesellschaftliche Prozesse, gesellschaftliche Diskussionen zu erkennen und in dem Zusammenhang auch mitzudiskutieren. Und auch in diesem Zusammenhang freuen wir uns heute, dass wir auf unsere Veranstaltung Spotlight Vartan Avakian heute vor Ort hier begrüßen zu dürfen. Vartan ist ein Stipendiat der KfW Stiftung schon von erster Stunde. Wir haben zusammen ein Kulturförderprogramm mit dem Betanienhaus in Berlin durchgeführt und da war Vartan einer der ersten Stipendiaten. Und wenn Sie nachher Zeit haben, können Sie sich auch wir haben 2 Bilder hier angekauft, die wir hier ausstellen, können sich diese entsprechend auch anschauen. Ja, so viel von meiner Seite. Das ist meines Erachtens der letzte Satz in Deutsch und alles andere übergebe ich gleich an meine Kollegin Rose Field, die eine kurze Einleitung ins Thema macht und dann starten wir auch schon mit der Filmvorführung und danach mit der Diskussion. Herzlichen Dank.
So, thank you, Dr. Helbig. Dear audience, dear friends of the KfW Stiftung, I think I can count at least some of you as friends by now. A warm welcome also from my side for our 3rd iteration of our Spotlight event series. In 2022, perhaps some of you saw it, we had a dance performance by the artist Kwai Sam Nang, and in 2023, we had a lecture by the artist Clara Jo. Spotlight was created with the goal of offering former scholarship holders the opportunity to present their works to the Frankfurt audience and as a way to facilitate a platform for exchange and transcultural encounter. So tonight I'm very, very happy to keep that tradition going with a film screening and a reading by Vartan Avakian. Vartan Avakian, as you heard, is a former scholarship holder of KfW Stiftung in cooperation with the Künstlerhaus Bethanien in Berlin. He has exhibited extensively internationally, including at the Maxi in Rome, the Sursok Museum in Beirut, the Mori Art Museum in Tokyo, and the Center of Contemporary Art in Warsaw. And in 2023, he showed his works in the anniversary exhibition with the Künstlerhaus Bethanien of our joint program called See You at the Studio. He also just recently finished a residency in Albania, which we may be talking about later tonight. Tonight, he will share with us the video works, the video story, and shortwave longwave, as well as a reading. All the works follow memories, fabrications, and delirium as they merge into a common narrative. An interdisciplinary artist, his works deal with complex social issues, reflecting on questions of collective memory and understanding. After the screening, there will be a short artist talk to delve deeper into Vartan Avakian's artistic practice, and then we will open the floor to questions from the audience, and I invite and encourage you to ask as many questions as you have and to engage in a dialogue with the artist and with the works. Before we start the evening, I must and I want to take this moment to thank the team of the KfW Stiftung and the KfW who have made this evening possible. Specifically, Judith Melisch, Luise Servaschok, Aline Hohmann, Lara Eikemeyer, Bernhard Kotzja, Imre Veres und Andreas Zimmer. And thanks also to Anna Perrault from Büro 069, who did the graphic design for the event. My heartfelt thanks, of course, and also goes out to Vartan Avakian for coming here tonight, for trusting us, and for sharing his work with us. Thank you again for coming. I wish you a lovely evening, and I would say, lights out.
Good evening. I would like to read to you parts of a story, parts of a script that I'm hoping one day will become a film. So, this is the story of a judicial investigator, a biochemist, and a salamander. They stand centuries apart, each staring at a trace. So, our story begins in an apartment in Beirut. It's January 2007. I'm sitting in my library. The floor is wet. Heavy rains have flooded the room. I look around and think that the carpets look nicer wet. Their colors become more saturated. The carpets will be fine. I'm sitting on a sofa with my legs tucked under my ass, biting the skin around my nails. It's not the first time this has happened. Maybe it's for the best, I think to myself. After all, the only things of real value in my home are books and maybe a few hard disks and some photos. In fact, the last time the place was broken into, the thief didn't take anything. On the contrary, he left something behind. A footprint. Size 41, Converse All-Stars sneakers. It could have been a fake Converse. I had no way to know. He must have left more, I thought to myself, like fingerprints, skin, hair particles, and other biological debris. Traces that are invisible to the eye, but packed with information. Clearly, I've watched too many crime shows. I get up and start to sort the books in my library into two piles. Pile A, books that were damaged by the water, and pile B, books that were not damaged. Summer 2015. A judicial investigator stands in a cemetery by the sea, inspecting a grave. Two elderly women stand beside him. The cemetery of 33 graves has no headstones, and all graves look alike. They are marked by a simple rectangular concrete frame delineating a patch of earth. Wild grass freely grows on both sides of the frame. The investigator is here to locate the resting place of a man buried over 50 years ago. His relatives believe he was laid to rest in this small cemetery by the Mediterranean. The two women witnessed the burial. One, who is now over 90 years old, easily identifies the grave of the man they called Hagop. Then she turns to the investigator and asks him, "Isn't there a record of everyone buried? What would you have done if you didn't find us, if we had died? Isn't there a science for this?" Before answering, the investigator recalls a verse from the Quran's Surat Fussilat, which is also known as Surat Hamim. They will ask their skins, "Why did you bear witness against us?" The skins will reply, "God gave us speech, and God gave speech to all others." He explains that samples from the remains could be tested and matched to DNA of living relatives. then pauses, sensing the need to explain what DNA is. He tells them, DNA is like an alphabet, each of us written in code, a transcript that can be read and compared. But like any language, like any foreign script, you must first learn how to read it. In this case, using DNA would mean partially exhuming all of the bodies to collect samples and comparing it to samples from the relatives. It's science, but not so different from what we're doing now, he tells them. Because it still depends on a network of witnesses, the ones who exhume the bodies, those who collect, who test. The trace may be evidence, but it needs someone to point to it and to translate it. Without that, everything is just scattered dust. It's probably late summer in 1st century Rome. A salamander emerges from a creek and retreats to a desolate place. It begins to molt. It begins to shed its own skin. It's an arduous but essential process in its life. The skin of a salamander is renewed periodically, a process regulated by its own hormones. The salamander is not fast and has few defenses as an animal. As Roman natural philosopher Pliny the Elder describes in his book Natural History, a salamander vomits from his mouth a milky liquid. If this liquid touches any part of the human body, it causes all hair to fall off and the skin to change color and break out in a rash. So the skin of the salamander is toxic to most animals. But the salamander does not leave it behind. After molting, it eats its own skin. This is an effort to conceal its traces, to ingest all evidence. The salamander seems to know that its skin can bear witness against its presence, a trace that predators might follow. To leave no trace, it buries its remains by ingesting them, carrying its own biological debris, its own biological remains, its own biological traces within itself. We're back to the apartment in Beirut, 2 weeks after the flood. I look at the piles of the books and feel I've made a mistake. I begin to resort the books, now into new categories. Group X, books that are replaceable, whose value only is in their content. And Group Y, books that hold an additional value beyond their content. And it is here that I took my phone and started to record the story of how of each book in category Y came into my life. Let me give you some examples. So these are books that I felt are not replaceable, not because of their content, not because of their story, but because of the story of how they ended up in my life. Weird Tales and Bizarre Myths. I stole this from a friend, who in turn had shoplifted it from a bookstore. I think it's the only book I have ever stolen. The New Testament. This tattered copy was used by my great-grandmother. It was found on her when she passed away in 1989. The book is very damaged. Bookworms have begun eating its pages. My parents wanted to throw it away for that exact reason. It was too damaged as a Bible. I have kept it since. Fragments of Existential Mathematics. I found this book in my living room. I don't know who left it there. No one has ever asked for it. I keep coming up with ideas about who might it belong to. Capital, Volume 2, in Arabic. A friend was trying to lure me into joining the Communist Party with this book. For a couple of months, we were a perfect match. He represented the essential Marxist intellectual friend you must have. I was the essential Armenian friend you must have in Lebanon. We soon realized we were essentially neither. The Holy Quran. I can't remember where I got this Quran from. I have many Qurans in my library, which were given to me at funeral wakes in the memory of the dead. Some have pictures of the person glued on the first page, others don't, and they look almost identical. Armenians in Lebanon, Volume 1, 2, 3, and 5. I know very well how this series got to my library. I won it in 1992 as a second prize in a general knowledge competition staged by an Armenian radio station called Voice of Van. The second prize consisted of an incomplete edition. Volume 4 was missing from the collection due to a misprint. The essential Frankfurt School reader. The book was stolen from the New York Public Library by a friend. Or at least that's what he claims. He then left it behind by mistake when he stayed at my house in 2009. He asked for it several times, but I decided to keep it as a trophy and as a symbol of our friendship. Minimalists. It's about music. The story of this book started on the streets of Hamra in Beirut. I saw a guy holding it and I started to talk to him. We found a connection. We were both studying theater and film. He lent the book to me, and I was introduced to the world of minimalist music. We had decided to become artists. We were 19. Somehow, we became artists. We wrote a play together, but we were into another art. He then moved in, and the book came to my library as part of his collection. When he left Lebanon, he sold all his books in a book bazaar to raise money to move to the Netherlands. My girlfriend at the time bought it to commemorate our friendship. It was one of the first books that was damaged in the flood. I will maybe read two more. Das Kapital, a novel of love and money markets. This came from Paris. I was browsing the bookstore Shakespeare and Company, like you do. I did not want to buy any books. I didn't have any money. I just wanted to visit the place. I was speaking Arabic to a friend who was with me, and I had the feeling that someone was stalking us. A book caught my eye, entitled Das Kapital, a novel of love and money markets. I thought to myself, that's an eye-catching title for a novel. So I picked it up, flipped through it, and returned it. As we were leaving, a guy came to us and asked, "Are you speaking Arabic?" He went on to tell us that his relatives lived in Beirut, and he was the author of the novel. And then he actually gave us a copy with a sweet and generic dedication. Maybe the last one, Healing the Soul. Another nice title for a book. I don't know why I have this book. I had asked a friend to help me get a particular book on the Quran called Kitab al-Masahif by Ibn Abi Dawood, which means almost the book of books. I figured that he would be able to find it, being a devout Muslim and a member of Hizbullah. He came back with Shifa al-Sudur, healing the soul. At least that's how I would translate it. The only thing in common between the two books is that they are religious books. I only read the first chapter. So these are the kinds of books that I had that I felt are irreplaceable. So for the past 2 weeks, I've been having a recurring dream that all my books were stolen and replaced with an exact replica. What if that actually happened? What difference would it make if I did not know? It's clear to me that most of the books in my library are generic, reproducible, and widely circulated. They are books that can be found in libraries, in bookstores. They're digitized, saved on hard disks, and on servers. But still, books in Group Y hold something else. They are unremarkable in themselves, but their value lies in something personal, an invisible layer of meaning that has accumulated over time, a minor, private history. But where is this history inscribed? I think to myself, why don't I just throw all the damaged books and buy new ones? Why don't I give them away and purchase only the ones I truly need? One book stands out, my great-grandmother's copy of the New Testament. I remember that I did not keep it as a book, but as a record, as a document, a witness to her life. But even if that belief rests on a chain of witnesses, those who confirmed that that specific Bible was found on her. So I had to trust this story. My relationship to it is based on this belief, that it's the one that she touched, that she read, that she held. What makes this book the book are all the layers that have accumulated on it over time. Mostly invisible biological remains that bear witness to this history. It's 2018. A biochemist stands in her lab at the American University of Beirut's chemistry department. She is overseeing the fabrication of silicon wafers, stuff that hard disks are made of. They are in your phones. To me, this sounds like science fiction, that you are making hard disks in a chemistry lab. But she explains to me that this technology is already outdated. Soon, computers and phones will store data on synthetic DNA polymers. What we think of as digital will be stored in biological matter. She continues to say that in one early experiment, a Harvard professor stored 70 million copies of his book in a single drop of liquid. I interrupted her to explain that I'm not interested in preserving the contents of the books, but in collecting their aura. I tell her, I see books as palimpsests, layered with invisible inscriptions. These layers are what make a book different from a copy of the same book. She had never heard of palimpsests. I had never heard of string theory. But we both shared an understanding that matter holds data in layers that we can imagine and layers that we can't even imagine now. What we can do, she says, is create a protocol to separate everything that is generic and reproducible from everything that is not. But making things visible, she explains, will render others invisible. Technically, the books will be ruined. I assure her the books are already in state of ruin. I had brought with me volume 2 of Capital in Arabic. It was to serve as the test subject, a book whose stories I wanted to preserve by tracing the residues left on its pages. The conservative in me thought this is a safe choice. I did not want to show up with the Quran, for example, despite owning several copies, almost identical. Despite having multiple interpretations of that you can dissolve, that you can disintegrate Holy Script. But volume 2 of Das Kapital, it was a safer choice. The biochemist designed a series of experiments. The first was very simple. It was as simple as black and white photography. A silver solution was applied to the pages, which would react with sweat stains left on the paper, showing basically fingerprints and other biological stains. This is an example of this experiment. These little ridges are actually fingerprints, because fingerprints are just smudges in our own sweat. The other process, I think this is actually a very clear fingerprint on the word mamlakatu sama, which means the kingdom of heaven. Someone wanted to point that out to someone, it seems. The other process was more intrusive. It involved separating sediments accumulated on the pages from the book itself. So technically, separating these little particles of sweat and biological debris. The process produced an almost imperceptible remainder suspended in a liquid. This remainder is inscribed with layers of information, she explained. Fragments of the banal story of this book, I thought. Some of these layers can be made visible and made to speak. Others remain latent, waiting to be made to speak. We collected this residual material in small capsules that can be presented as artifacts, like the ones you can see upstairs. But they can also be ingested into the body in the hope that they will be passed into future bodies as memories. Thank you.
Vartan, thank you for that. Really, really wonderful. I thought maybe you told me I can surprise you on stage, so I know we talked about what we're going to say. I'm going to start with something different. Maybe we could talk quickly about what we saw in the videos. Because we saw these two videos that were quite different in their aesthetic quality, how they were built up, and a little bit in their narration, but generally are dealing with the same thing. Maybe you could explain a little bit the differences in the videos, what we saw.
Okay. Maybe I start by saying how they are similar. I think in both of them, there is a clear indicator to the materiality of video. So like you can know it's video. And in the second one, I clearly talk about how our memories are structured through the media we create. So I think in the second video, it was very clear a story I was telling that when I first saw a recorded VHS memory, I thought, oh my God, this looks exactly like reality. But then a new technology came, and this other one looked dated. And I think this will continue to happen. So now we look at 4K images and think this is a mirror of reality. But there will come a time when we will see this image and we will know this is first quarter of the 2000s. So in a way, the materiality itself becomes a marker of time. And I try to use this in what I'm trying to tell people, that technology, we can understand it and see it when it starts to reach its limits. In the first video, towards the end, the way the image breaks, for those who work in video, they can tell you which tape it came from. Because mini DV breaks differently from digital Betacam, from Betacam. So like in a way, when we see a black and white photograph, we know on which medium it was stored, which period's medium. So we can know that it was not shot before that, it can be shot after that. So this is about how they're similar. And they are both related to trying to tell an autobiography that is based on, that doesn't make a distinction between, to answer a question I heard before today, fiction and reality. And maybe I can expand about why I don't see the difference
Please, yeah.
immediately. Oh,
Yeah, please.
you put me under. My interest, even in the works I'm showing here that are about books and about data, is my deep fascination with language, with coding and decoding. This ranges from poetry to DNA, because DNA is a code and it's a transcript. mRNA is a transcript. It goes and makes a copy of our DNA. So like it's a register of data and it's a language. And I was thinking that our fascination with memories is related to our understanding that the future is coming and an understanding of our own mortality, that we all die. So we become obsessed with leaving stories and traces. And because of that, when we created a language that has an understanding of a past event, we were able to try to not only understand memories, but to understand future memories, to understand that the future happens. And through that, we started to tell stories. And stories are not what happened necessarily. They're what can happen. So by understanding that there was a past, we can start imagine a future and tell and try to imagine if something happened, maybe we don't want it to happen again. Or if something happened, we really want it to happen again. So we start to imagine, to fictionalize our present and our future. And I wanted to tell something about the word fiction that is kind of related to my presence in Germany. I now live in Germany, and sometimes to leave, if I don't have my residence permit, they give you a paper that is called Fiktionsbescheinigung, something like that.
Yeah.
And I was fascinated that it's called fiction. And the first time they gave it to me, I thought, guys, I can't leave with this. Like if I give this to like border control in Albania or in Armenia or in Lebanon, it says fictitious certificate. Like this is not real. But fiction means just, actually fiction means shaped, like something we made. And that's why reality, we have the ability to shape our reality and shape our future. So in both works that are autobiographical, every time you're telling a story, you're in a way shaping it as well. So both stories actually, someone can find exact biographical moments in my life that are exactly like these stories. Like I did think it's America, all of these things happened in my life, but I think I don't distinguish them from fictions and aspirations. They are memories and the way I want to imagine my memories. So they are fictitious in that sense.
That's a quite interesting point because when we speak about your work, or when I spoke about your work, when we spoke about it together, we always talk about this idea of the experience of memory. So not anything specific, but something that you kind of feel. And as we know, experiences can vary depending on the day, depending on your mood at the time. And memory is notoriously fickle. It can be changed, it can be decayed or rebuilt. You and the people in the first film could have different memories of the same event. So I guess a little bit my question is, how do you go about this topic of memory artistically? What drew you to it, and how do you, I guess, choose the mediums that you use? Because you don't do just film. We've mentioned there are 2 works upstairs in our collection, and these are photographs. And I'm not entirely sure how you'd describe the other one. It's sort of sculpture, sort of.
They are
You can see,
sculptures.
you'll see, yeah. So maybe you can speak a little bit about how you use this idea of experience of memory as a starting point, and how you work it into your artistic practice, or how you've built your artistic practice around it.
Yeah. So I tell it again from an autobiographical or pseudo-autobiographical way. So I grew up in a very ancient city called Byblos. People are fighting if it's the oldest continuously inhabited city or not, but basically it's a very old city. So everything around us is like layered with so much information. Every time someone wants to like build a house, they dig up something that is like 3,000 years old. There is another thing that was fascinating for me growing up in this city. We have a lot of fossils of fish fossils. Some geological conditions created that in our mountains, we have a lot of fish and plant fossils from I don't know when. And this experience made me understand that we leave traces willingly and unwillingly. We create artifacts willingly, trying to leave a memory, a trace. We tell stories in that way. We create artifacts that are useful. We create artifacts that are not useful, religious figurines, markings on walls. But what fascinates me is that we don't, what really fascinated me is that the scale of this should make us humble. Because when they dig up a small vase in my hometown, and they try to analyze it, they analyze it for things that are beyond the creator's intention. So I think I create memories, I create fossils for future excavation, totally, like I am resigned to the fact that it will be totally outside of my control. So what people will look at, it will be their own interests, how they will analyze it. Maybe they will analyze from it things that I never imagined. But I did create the gesture of leaving a fossil. And the data in it is beyond my understanding. And I'll give two examples to make this concrete. So when investigators walked into crime scenes in the 70s, they would collect biological material, blood, hair, semen, of course. But they collected them knowing that biological material has data. But at the time, they didn't know DNA yet. We can, from blood, do blood type. But then we discovered there's a lot of data. And now we only decode 2 to 3% of DNA. So like we have no idea what kind of data is stored in the majority of it. The other example is that there was a carpet, a Caucasian carpet, found in Siberia. It's like, I don't know, it's like 1,500 years old. It was stored under snow, and finally it was found, and they were analyzing it as an artifact. It's true that we would look at the patterns, we would look at hidden messages, which was common to leave hidden messages in carpets, actually, like little stories. And the patterns tell something about the culture, the craftsmanship tells something. But there are other things there that people did not imagine that are useful to us now. So they analyzed this carpet for one, the history of diseases of sheep because of the hair of the sheep. So the craftsman at the time or the craftsperson, because many were women, did not even imagine this. But they knew they were leaving something behind. They also analyzed it to finally solve the mystery of red color in Caucasian carpets, which one theory was they were trading with, the Canaanites and the Phoenicians to get the color red from this from the Murex thing that we talked about today. But it turned out to be not the case. Because of biological analysis, we solved a piece of data about how people lived there. What they used for red is that they harvested blood from an insect that lived and had no particular use for them other than that. So like we create these moments for people to come and analyze and learn something about us, about themselves, about their aspirations, about our fears. So it's beyond our control.
Very much. It also goes back to this idea, I think, that you were talking about in the reading of this bearing witness, this showing that can be very unintentional in a way, but it can also be very eye-opening. And when you're creating your works, how do you see them or perceive them as witnesses, or do you see them as the consequence of witnesses?
Okay, I will answer this also from my involvement in the work of an institution in Lebanon called the Arab Image Foundation. And the Arab Image Foundation is a photo archive that's been, I think, there for now 30 years, that has 600, 700,000 artifacts, mainly photographs from West Asia, North Africa, and the diaspora of Arab countries. And in the preservation process, my interest was how witnessing is part of preservation. So it's true that the technicians clean the negatives, they digitize them, they put them in vaults, cold vaults, so that they can bear witness. But that artifact, without its historic context, without stories around it, is not enough of its reality. It's not enough of a witness. So by talking about it, by working with it, by doing other works about it, this photograph is preserved also through these stories. And I try to focus on how preservation also happens in the body of witnesses. So part of preserving a particular photograph is, if I tell you the story of this photograph, then that story, which is very important for the context, is now preserved in this congregation of witnesses. So the more people know about it, the higher the chance is that it will never be misunderstood. So a photograph tells a lot of things, but actually not enough. I can show you a photograph of, now I'm working on a collection where it looks like portraits of families. If you don't know the story of the photograph, which is that they were forced to make this photograph before leaving their country as a tool and certificate that they vow never to return, so it was an act of ethnic cleansing, then it's just a family photo. So the story of the photograph is part of preservation. So bearing witness, I think, also happens through oral tradition, of course through documents, but through bearing witness within our own bodies. And I want to add one more thing here, that because now in the age of machine learning and archives and AI, we tend to forget this other archive. It's true that machine learning happens in this like big archive of data that they tap into. So AI never brings anything new. It brings something from an archive, which is good and important. But there's another archive we are not seeing. It's a huge archive that we carry within our bodies, which is based on oral tradition, based on histories we learn. It's not only a recipe and the know-how of making dough that we keep from one generation to the other, but also like instinctively there are things we know. Like, it also happens in animals. If we kind of listen also to this like knowledge that we've been accumulating as humans for thousands of years, it is within us to a certain extent, and we can learn to tap into it. So this bearing witness collectively, feel we can put also a lot of trust in to learn how to listen to the knowledge we've accumulated, that we have traces of, but also a lot of it is actually within us, like even scientifically is within us.
Yeah. I would like to ask one more question before I open the floor to questions from the audience. So think of your ones now. I would like to go back to memory for my last question, and this idea of memory and collective memory, more specifically, I guess, kind of touching on this idea of collective bearing witness, and how narratives are created around collective memory. Maybe you could speak shortly to how you see narratives being created around collective memory, and also how maybe they are changed through collective memory. Specifically talking about when stories are refound or more information is come.
Okay. So, as like I try to show in my work that I really focus on data, and I make a distinction between data and information. Like in my definition, it may be everyone's definition, but let's say in my definition, like data is the set of givens. Information is when we read them, so they need a witness. So data can be abstract. Information is when someone reads them, decodes them. And every set of data can create more than one piece of information. But then information, the same information can be used in different discourses. And I can give you like the same set of information that can be used in opposing even ideological discourses. So like if I tell you that through our DNA, we know that we all go back to the same actually roots that can be traced back to Africa, you can use this to say we are all the same genetically, but the same set of information can be used to say, yes, but now there are these two genetic groups, so you can use it for racism as well. So it's the same information based on the same data. I'm saying this to say that historic moments, I don't think I can control historic moments. And the same information can be used in different ways, as I told you. Like, we have a photograph at the Arab Image Foundation from 1896 of a family doing a picnic. So someone can say, wonderful Ottoman family doing a picnic. They are middle class from their attire, amazing. And it can be used for that kind of discourse. If you know that this family was eventually was the victim of the Armenian genocide later on, it's something else. So I think, like, since I cannot control who is in power and how they use data to create narratives, and yes, since we can't control this, I try to create fossils, moments, memories, congress or congregation of witnesses that at the right moment can oppose historical revisionisms, and can in the future redeem those who can't control narratives now.
Yeah. That's a very nice last sentence. I don't think I'll comment on it, honestly. Vartan, thank you again so much for coming.
Thank you.
For sharing with us. Yeah. And of course, our heartfelt thanks to you for coming as well, once again to the Villa 102, and I hope to see you again.
Thank you.
Yeah.